The worst Christmas of my life became the best when I exposed my own son and his wife for starving my 10-year-old grandson. They thought they were playing their part perfectly, but they forgot that Grandpa, a former military communications specialist, knows how to hide a microphone where no one would ever look, inside a fuzzy teddy bear. And that bear was about to speak right in the middle of a Christmas toast. I'm George, 68, and a few months ago I started seeing the shadow of a child where my grandson, Toby, used to be. Toby is 10, usually a whirlwind of energy and bad jokes, but lately he was just dim. It wasn't just the weight loss, though, that was alarming. His clothes, which fit perfectly last summer, now hung loose like empty sails. What truly terrified me was the look in his eyes, a deep, constant, nervous flutter, as if he was always waiting for the next blow. He'd jump if you simply touched his shoulder. My son Mark and his new wife Cynthia would brush off my concerns with that practiced, saccharine smile. "Oh, Dad, he's just hitting a growth spurt, and we're encouraging healthy eating," Mark would say, while Cynthia would coo, "He's just becoming more mature, George, a bit more serious." The more they insisted, the less I believed them. They were masters of the perfect public facade, and that made my stomach churn with dread. If you're into stories where the good guy gets the ultimate satisfying revenge against truly terrible people, make sure to hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you won't want to miss how this plays out. The house itself felt wrong. Mark and Cynthia had always been image-obsessed, but since the wedding, their home had become a museum of forced perfection. Everything was pristine, silent, and staged. When I visited, they would overcompensate, offering Toby lavish portions of food. Yet, when Toby thought no one was looking, he would hoard small pieces of bread in his pocket, only to nervously discard them later. It was the frantic, panicked behavior of someone who didn't know where their next meal was coming from. That's when the memory of my military training kicked in. For years, I specialized in radio surveillance, communications intercept, and subtle tech deployment. I knew how to get the truth, even from people who thought they were impregnable. Straight accusations would only fracture the family, leading to lies and court battles I wasn't sure I could win without proof. I needed undeniable audio proof of the psychological and physical neglect they were inflicting. They had built an elaborate lie, and I was going to use technology to tear it down, brick by brick. The upcoming Christmas dinner, the largest family gathering of the year, was the perfect stage for the final act. I just needed the right prop, a simple yet incredibly deceptive prop. The idea of the smart teddy bear popped into my head one sleepless night. It had to be something completely innocuous, something so ridiculous that neither Mark nor Cynthia would ever suspect it held the key to their downfall. A 10-year-old boy getting a plush toy. They'd laugh, dismiss it, and that dismissiveness would be their undoing. My plan was risky, bordering on illegal if not done carefully, but I wasn't planting bugs in private bedrooms. I was recording conversations that often took place in common areas or during supervised mealtimes, where verbal abuse about food was becoming their standard. I told myself I was gathering evidence for the sake of a child's safety, and that justified every risk. The next morning, I drove to the nearest electronics store, not for toys, but for the tiny high-gain microphone components and micro SD cards I would need to turn a harmless storyteller into an uncompromising witness. This was no longer a personal feud. It was a rescue mission. My gut told me that Mark and Cynthia were operating on two different channels: the smiling, perfect family channel they broadcast to the world, and the cruel, starved channel they ran behind closed doors. They were too polished, too quick to dismiss Toby's obvious distress. As a former military communications specialist, I was trained to look for cracks in the signal, to find the blind spots, and I knew a direct confrontation would fail. Mark would deny everything, and Cynthia would play the wounded victim. I would be labeled the jealous, interfering father. I needed an unimpeachable witness. The idea was simple: turn a commonplace object into an invisible eye and ear. My time in signal intelligence taught me that the best hiding places are the ones people don't consider valuable or threatening. A teddy bear fit the bill perfectly. It was a joke to them, a childish gift for a 10-year-old they were trying to force into premature adulthood. I found the Smart Storyteller bear online. It was a benign, connected toy that was supposed to record parents reading stories and play them back. Perfect. I ordered it along with a small package of specialized components, a high-gain omnidirectional microphone array, a tiny, high-capacity SD card, and a modified low-power Wi-Fi module that could transmit over a private, encrypted channel. This was old tech to me, but to them it would be magic. My garage became my temporary operations center. I carefully disassembled the bear, preserving its soft, cuddly exterior. The standard recording hardware was trash. I replaced it with my specialized gear. The tricky part was the external control. I rigged the bear's existing record button, which was usually just a cute paw, to become a remote activation switch, responding only to a specific ultrasonic frequency broadcast from my phone. I didn't want the recording to be continuous. I wanted to activate it only when I left the house, minimizing the chance of capturing something innocuous that could complicate the evidence. This wasn't about spying on their whole lives. It was about getting irrefutable proof of Toby's treatment. I tested the range and the audio quality. The new mic picked up whispers from across the room, crystal clear. I imagined Mark raising his glass on Christmas Eve, toasting family and love, while I sat there with the definitive proof of his hypocrisy humming silently in my pocket. The revenge wouldn't be physical, it would be surgical. It would be total exposure and the swift rescue of my grandson. I packed the bear back into its original box. The mission was about to begin. The day I brought the modified teddy bear to Mark's house felt like an espionage movie. The box looked innocent enough, bright colors, cartoonish font. I remember the forced conviviality as I handed the present to Toby, who was sitting silently on the sofa, looking smaller than ever. "Hey, buddy," I said, trying to inject some genuine warmth into the strained atmosphere. "Grandpa got you a special friend. He tells stories." Toby's eyes widened slightly, a flicker of 10-year-old excitement piercing through the usual gloom. He hugged the bear immediately. That simple, desperate hug confirmed everything for me. This wasn't just a toy. It was a shield, a comfort, a confidant. Mark and Cynthia's reaction was exactly what I'd anticipated. Mark chuckled, a sound that grated on my nerves. "A teddy bear, Dad? He's 10, not 4? Trying to regress him, are we?" Cynthia smiled that tight, synthetic smile. "It's sweet, George. But maybe Toby can keep it in his closet. We're really encouraging him to move past his childish things and focus on his schoolwork." "Nonsense," I countered easily, leaning into the role of the doting, slightly out-of-touch grandparent. "Every kid needs a friend. Besides, it's a smart bear. It was expensive. Just tell it a story, Toby. Or just keep it close, buddy. You never know when you might need a secret listener." I watched as Toby carried the bear, which he immediately named Buster, up to his room. Cynthia looked annoyed at the clutter, but the topic was dropped. Before I left, I had a quiet moment alone in the living room. I pulled out my phone, a plain-looking, older model I used only for this purpose. I navigated to a specialized encrypted app I'd programmed myself. With a quick, silent tap, I sent the ultrasonic trigger signal to Buster. The tiny, customized Wi-Fi module inside the bear woke up, connected to the home network's blind spot I'd identified earlier, and started recording directly onto the high-capacity SD card. The light indicator, a nearly invisible pinprick I'd placed behind the bear's plastic eye, flashed once, confirming the connection. I left that day with a heavy mix of guilt and focused determination. Guilt because I was technically deceiving my own son, but determination because I knew I was doing it to save my grandson. I drove home, the tension building in my chest. Now, I just had to wait for the evidence to accumulate. The bear was planted. The trap was set. Now came the excruciating part. Listening. The sound of their normal, cruel life was about to become my primary source of intelligence. The silence in my own house was deafening after I planted Buster. I spent the next few days monitoring the feed from the bear. The initial recordings were mostly mundane, which was the hardest part. Hours of the low hum of their domestic life, Cynthia yelling at Alexa, Mark complaining about work, Toby shuffling his feet down the hallway. It was easy to doubt myself. Maybe they really were just strict parents. Maybe I was overreacting because I missed my grandson. Then came the kitchen recording, late on a Tuesday evening. I was transferring the data remotely, a massive file, and scrubbing through it, listening through high-quality noise-canceling headphones to catch every nuance. The initial segment was a strained conversation between Mark and Cynthia about finances. It wasn't explicitly abusive, but it was cold, calculating. "We need to cut back," Mark's voice, tight with stress, said clearly. "The mortgage is killing us, and your sister's wedding is next month." Cynthia's reply was sharp, almost a hiss. "I know that, Mark. We already handled the biggest drain." There was a slight pause. I gripped the armrest of my chair. "Look, the kid doesn't need 3 full meals," Mark continued, his voice dropping slightly, but Buster's high-gain mic caught it perfectly. "He's 10. He can fast a bit. It's not starvation. It's calorie control. We just have to make sure he eats enough when your folks are around, or Dad." The word drain hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just neglecting him. They were viewing him as a financial burden to be minimized. The callousness of the calculation was sickening. I felt a cold wave of absolute certainty wash over me. This wasn't about discipline or healthy eating. This was pure, manipulative cruelty driven by greed. The audio wasn't a smoking gun, not yet, but it was the confirmation I needed. It was proof of intent. They were conspiring to deceive and restrict a child's essential needs. My anger shifted from a dull ache to a razor-sharp focus. I backed up the file immediately, labeling it Exhibit A, Intent. I knew the true evidence, the direct emotional trauma, was still to come. I had to keep recording and keep listening, bracing myself for the heartbreaking audio that would give me the leverage to act. The closer we got to Christmas, the more reckless they would likely become, confident that the holiday facade would cover their tracks. I was banking on their arrogance. The casual malice I heard in Part 4 was just the appetizer. The real gut-wrenching evidence arrived 3 days later, late one afternoon. I was reviewing the new batch of files, filtering for moments of sudden silence or heightened tension, knowing those were the gaps where the truth usually lived. I found a 15-minute file recorded from the kitchen, where Toby often sat doing homework. The background noise was quiet, just the hum of the refrigerator, making the dialogue painfully clear. First, I heard Toby's small, hesitant voice. "Mom, please? Just a piece of bread? I'm really hungry." The term Mom made my blood run cold. He was desperate enough to call his stepmother that, hoping for mercy. Cynthia's voice was next, and the lack of anger in it was chilling. It wasn't a shout. It was a low, steady, calculated cruelty. "Toby, we talked about this. You had your half a sandwich at lunch. We have a rule. No unnecessary snacking. You need to earn your food by behaving, and frankly, your attitude this week has been abysmal. So no, not even a crumb." I heard a small, broken whimper from Toby, the sound of a child trying to suppress tears but failing. The most painful part was hearing the muffled scraping sound of him trying to quietly move away from the kitchen, presumably clutching Buster. Then Mark's voice cut in, just as indifferent as Cynthia's. He wasn't defending his son, he was rubber-stamping the abuse. "Listen to your mother, son. It's about discipline. You need to learn self-control. Besides, you know Grandpa is coming for Christmas. If you eat like a pig now, he'll notice. And we don't want that, do we? This diet is preparing you for the show." The words, "preparing you for the show," solidified their conspiracy. They were actively using the child's hunger as a tool of control and a means to protect their public image. It was manipulation and neglect masquerading as parenting. I ripped off my headphones, my hands shaking with a fury so intense it felt like a physical fever. They were not just financially motivated, they were power-hungry bullies enjoying the control they had over a vulnerable boy. This specific recording, Toby's quiet plea, Cynthia's cold refusal, and Mark's agreement, was the undisputed proof I needed for the police, for a judge, and most importantly, for the entire family. This was my hammer. I created multiple secure backups and started counting the days until Christmas. Their perfect facade was built on my grandson's empty stomach, and I couldn't wait to watch it crumble. With the concrete evidence secured, my focus shifted entirely to the execution of the plan. Christmas was just 2 days away. This wasn't just about getting Toby out. It was about destroying Mark and Cynthia's credibility so thoroughly that they would never be able to contest my custody claim. They deserved to be exposed in the most humiliating public way possible. I meticulously reviewed the hours of audio, categorizing the abuse. I needed sound bites that were short, sharp, and undeniable. I settled on 2 primary clips. The first was the discipline and diet clip from Cynthia, where she explicitly mentioned earning your food and the abysmal attitude, a cold, calculated dismissal of a child's hunger. This established the deliberate cruelty of the stepmother. The second, and perhaps the more devastating, was Mark's voice saying, "This diet is preparing you for the show," immediately followed by Toby's small, suppressed sob. This directly implicated my son, proving he was a knowing and willing participant in the starvation plan to maintain their public image. I edited these 2 clips into a seamless, 3-minute sequence, maximizing the emotional impact. Next was the hardware. I needed the audio to be loud enough to cut through the noise of a large family dinner. My phone, which controlled the bear, was discreet, but its speaker was weak. So I built a small, high-powered directional speaker, no bigger than a pack of cards, and disguised it inside a festive, cheap ceramic reindeer decoration. I connected the speaker wirelessly to my phone via a separate, short-range, secure Bluetooth channel. The placement was crucial. I planned to put the reindeer discreetly behind the bowl of holiday punch on their dining table. The night before the dinner, I drove over to Mark's under the guise of dropping off a few early gifts. I saw Toby briefly. He was paler than ever, his eyes large and scared, but he clutched Buster tightly. He whispered a quick, "Thank you, Grandpa," which meant the world to me. I just nodded, giving his small hand a firm squeeze. "You just hold on tight, buddy. Everything's going to be okay very soon." As I was leaving, Cynthia tried to make small talk, going on about the elaborate meal and all the relatives coming. "It will be just perfect, George," she boasted, touching Mark's arm possessively. I smiled back, a genuine, cold smile they completely misinterpreted. "Yes," I agreed. "I think this year Christmas is going to be unforgettable." I had my weapon, my evidence, and my stage. All I needed now was the perfect cue. Christmas Day arrived, thick with fake cheer and the smell of roasting turkey. I arrived at Mark and Cynthia's house exactly on time, my heart beating a steady, cold rhythm. The house was already packed with cousins, aunts, and uncles, a dozen people ready to witness the collapse of the perfect family illusion. I quickly and casually placed the ceramic reindeer, which held my hidden speaker, next to the punch bowl, exactly where I'd planned. It blended perfectly with the other tacky festive decor. My phone, containing the audio package and the Trigger app, was tucked securely in the inside pocket of my blazer. Mark and Cynthia were in full performance mode. They were the perfect hosts, laughing loudly, asking about everyone's jobs, and lavishly complimenting the food. Cynthia, dressed impeccably, was constantly refilling glasses, radiating a warmth that felt manufactured and sterile. Mark kept patting Toby on the head, saying, "Look at my smart boy. Isn't he growing up so fast?" Every word was a knife twist, knowing what I knew. Toby was seated beside me. He was impossibly quiet. When Cynthia served him, she put a normal, generous portion on his plate, a glaring contrast to the calorie control I knew they enforced when I wasn't around. But Toby didn't dive into the food. He ate slowly, nervously, cutting tiny pieces and glancing up at his stepmother after every bite, as if waiting for permission or a reprimand. It was the learned behavior of a starving animal under the constant threat of punishment. The sight made my blood boil, but I forced my face into a genial, grandfatherly mask. Aunt Carol, bless her oblivious heart, leaned over and whispered, "Isn't it wonderful, George? Mark and Cynthia are such pillars of the community, a perfect family." I just smiled and nodded, feeling the weight of the truth. They were indeed pillars, pillars of deceit. I looked across the table at Mark, who was raising his wine glass, making eye contact with every guest, his face glowing with smug self-satisfaction. He had no idea that the silent, smiling old man across the table was about to detonate a bomb of pure, unedited audio truth. The performance was flawless, the audience captive, and the tension was excruciating. All I needed was for the main actor to give me my cue. The dinner progressed in a haze of forced laughter and clinking silverware. I played my role perfectly, sharing old family stories and admiring Cynthia's cooking, all while my thumb rested subtly over the secure interface on my phone inside my pocket. I could feel the tension radiating off Toby, even though he was sitting right next to me. Mark and Cynthia were growing bolder, intoxicated by their own success at maintaining the illusion. Cynthia, after a second glass of wine, leaned across the table and addressed Toby with a theatrical sigh. "Toby, honey, don't you think that's quite enough mashed potatoes for now?" she asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. "Remember what the doctor said about moderation? We want you to feel your best for Santa." It was subtle, a jab cloaked in wellness advice, but the implication was clear. Stop eating. Toby instantly froze, his fork halfway to his mouth, his face flushed with shame, and he quietly pushed the plate away, confirming his learned fear of food restriction. Mark, seeing my expression tighten slightly, quickly interjected, trying to smooth things over. "She's right, Dad. We're just trying to instill some strong discipline. Kids nowadays have no self-control. It's for his own good." I didn't argue. I just gave Mark a long, steady look that should have warned him, but he was too arrogant to notice. Instead of backing down, he decided it was the perfect time to elevate the spectacle. He tapped his spoon on his water glass, silencing the room. The moment had arrived. Mark stood up, holding his wine glass high. All eyes were on him. My heart was pounding not with fear, but with anticipation. I quietly shifted my posture, ensuring the hidden speaker behind the punch bowl had a clear path, and I double-checked the connection to my phone. The pre-edited audio clip was queued up, ready for instant playback. "I want to make a toast," Mark announced, his voice booming with false sincerity. "A toast to family, to this incredible woman, Cynthia, who has brought so much love and structure into my life, and to unconditional love." He paused, looking right at me, expecting my nod of approval. He was delivering the final, hypocritical line that would serve as his own execution order. I gripped the phone tighter. This was it. The second he finished the phrase, "unconditional love," I would press the button and unleash the truth. Mark finished his sentence, his voice ringing with self-congratulation. "And to unconditional love." He raised his glass higher, ready for the appreciative clinks and applause. That was my cue. I didn't pause. I pushed the play button on my phone. The hidden speaker in the ceramic reindeer, amplified and tuned, instantly seized the acoustic stage. The noise that erupted was a horrifying sonic jolt, cutting through the festive silence with brutal clarity. First came the cold, sharp voice of Cynthia, magnified for the entire room. "Toby, we talked about this. No unnecessary snacking. You need to earn your food by behaving, not even a crumb." The entire table froze. Glasses stopped midway to lips. The sound was so raw, so close, that people instinctively looked at the kitchen door. Mark's face, a second ago glowing with self-satisfaction, went white. Cynthia's jaw dropped, her perfect composure shattering. Before anyone could process the shock, the second, more devastating clip played. It was Mark's own voice, dismissive and cruel. "Listen to your mother, son. You know Grandpa is coming for Christmas. If you eat like a pig now, he'll notice. This diet is preparing you for the show." This was immediately followed by the most heartbreaking sound. A small, choked sob, the sound of my 10-year-old grandson in pain. Chaos erupted. People were whispering, shouting, "What is that?" and "Who said that?" Aunt Carol dropped her fork. My cousin Helen stared wide-eyed at Mark, who looked like a deer caught in headlights. He tried to speak, his voice a choked croak. "Dad, what did you do? That's edited. It's a joke," he stammered, his eyes darting desperately around the room. Cynthia was already halfway out of her chair, her face contorted in naked fury, whispering, "The bear! That damn bear!" I stood up slowly, calmly, meeting Mark's panicked gaze. Toby, sitting next to me, was shaking violently, clutching his silent teddy bear, Buster. "No joke, Mark," I said, my voice low and steady, yet carrying absolute authority. I pulled the small phone from my pocket and held it up, displaying the audio file name, Mark, Cynthia, Neglect, 12vol23.mp3. "This is raw audio recorded over the last 2 weeks in your kitchen. You raised a toast to unconditional love, but we just heard your version of it. You were starving my grandson to save a few dollars and maintain your perfect image." I pointed to the ceramic reindeer. "That's how we heard it. And this," I reached down and gently took the teddy bear from Toby, holding it up, "is the listening device that saved my boy. I am not asking, Mark. I am taking Toby home. You and Cynthia have a lot of explaining to do, but not to me. To the police, to the rest of this family." The silence that followed was total, broken only by Cynthia's hysterical denial. The perfect Christmas was over, and the perfect family facade had finally collapsed. The aftermath was exactly the kind of mess Mark and Cynthia had worked so hard to avoid. Cynthia started screaming denials, claiming the audio was a deep fake, but the shock on Mark's face was the real confirmation for everyone else. Cousin Helen, a lawyer, immediately called Child Protective Services after I quietly showed her the modified bear and the clear audio file on my phone. I didn't waste time on the ensuing chaos. My mission was complete. I scooped up Toby, wrapped in his blanket, and walked out of that house into the cold Christmas night. As I passed Mark, who was still trying to shout down the horrified relatives, I looked him in the eye one last time. "You made your choice, son, and now you live with it." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal filings, police interviews, and endless paperwork. The audio proof was irrefutable. It wasn't just neglect. It was calculated emotional and physical deprivation. Within a month, I was granted full temporary custody of Toby, which soon became permanent. Mark and Cynthia's perfect lives, their reputations, their standing in the community, and their marriage were utterly destroyed. Toby is thriving now. He's put on healthy weight, his eyes are bright, and his laughter is loud again. The first time I saw him ask for a second slice of pizza, without glancing nervously over his shoulder, I almost cried. He still keeps Buster, the teddy bear, but now it sits on his desk as a silent reminder of his rescue, not his pain. As for me, I found a new purpose. I started a small, discreet consulting service for grandparents fighting for custody, using my technical skills to help them gather legally sound, nonviolent evidence against abusive caregivers. It wasn't the military work I once did, but it was service to the innocent, and it gave me a peace I hadn't known in years. Toby and I are a team, a family built on honesty and full plates. We are happy, healthy, and moving forward. My life with Toby is a testament to the fact that sometimes the most effective revenge isn't violence or confrontation, but exposing the simple, ugly truth to the light. It took a cunning plan and a lot of courage, but my grandson is safe. But I have to ask you, given the choice, destroying my son's life to save my grandson's, did I make the right decision? And if you were in my shoes, what would you have done differently? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this true story of revenge and rescue compelling, please hit that like button and subscribe right now to ensure you don't miss another incredible story of justice served. Thank you for listening.